Dear all, today we are going to talk about Argentina. Hello everybody, this is Carolina speaking and I am with my colleague Carlos, who will help me to mention some important aspects regarding artistic expression such as music in Argentina.
Well, first of all, I have to say that we have always heard the expression rock en español as an Argentine musical identity. Of course, in any country, this expression applies to its own rock story. However, Argentine rock became as the most heard not only in Latin America, but around the world. Many still call them national rock stars. Some artists from its beginnings are Charly Garcia, Spinetta, Manal, Vox Day, some closer as Sumo or Division. Personalities who know how to model the beginnings of rock. For that reason, rock lovers still have them in their collection, one that is really valuable for them.
Thanks, Carlos. Now let's talk a little about the history of Argentine national rock, which began in the mid-1960s. That was the beginning of a musical genre that was called national rock, mainly due to the use of Spanish to compose the lyrics, since rock and roll groups that existed composed and sang in English. In addition, the songs that these artists began to compose talk about the subjects that worried young people. At that point, rock was no longer just for dancing or killing time.
That's right, also because in the first decades, the local groups were dedicated to sing Spanish and English rock and roll songs. They portrayed their own and international hits, but without acquiring a musical identity of their own. From the mid-1960s, the Argentine national rock had a constant evolution through the 70s and 80s, and it became an international genre. Argentine national rock is a very broad musical genre applied to any variety of rock, blues, punk, new wave, and heavy metal from Argentina. Among other musical styles, its main exponents are Charly Garcia, Luis Alberto Spinetta, León Gieco, Papo, Fito Páez, Sumo, Patricio Rey y Los Redonditos de Ricota, Soda Stereo, Miguel Mateus, Los Piojos, Ricardo Lorio, Lito Nevia, and many more.
Okay, in this sense, it is necessary to mention the 60s, since it was the beginning of the so-called Beatles phenomenon. International rock joined with a politicized generation mobilized through students and union organizations, which began to face military dictatorships in the street with an active participation of young men and women from the country's large middle class. That generation quickly identified the rock and sexual revolution, which they opposed as a radical break to the tango and mentioned double standards of their ancestors.
It was in the underground scene of Buenos Aires where the fundamental pieces of Argentine national rock began to emerge. A group of rockers began to find themselves in marginal spaces, such as La Cueva, La Ditela, Institute Auditorium, and bars that did not close like legendary pizzeria La Perla in Plaza Once. There the musicians that gave origin to the first national rock were found, like Lito Nevia and Ciro Fogliata, Hugo Fattoruso and his brother Osvaldo, Morris, Pajarito Saguri, Javier Martínez, Francis Smith, Claudio Gavis, Papo Napolitano, Carlos Melino, Alejandro Medina, Miguel Abuelo, and Tanguito, among others. The definitive milestone of Argentine rock was the group Los Gatos, a band that created its own material. The band released on July the 3rd, 1967, a single called La Balsa, a song composed by Tanguito and Lito Nevia on side A and Yesterday No More on side B. The record was a massive success and sold in more than 250,000 copies.
Well, during this time they formed Almendra by Luis Alberto Spinetta and Manal, considered a pioneer of blues sing in Spanish. Together with Los Gatos, these three bands are considered the founding trilogy of Argentine national rock. However, none of these groups would have very long history. In fact, many of these bands were dissolved in the early 70s, at the beginning of the new decade, Vox Day, whose mix of hard alcohol and subtle melodies refreshed the movement, also stood out. His album, La Biblia, is one of the definitive albums of Argentine classic rock.
Okay, that's good for the 70s. Later in the 80s, after the military dictatorship and the opening to new international fashions both in hairstyles clothing, and the application of electronics in popular music, new artists who revolutionized the industry appeared, such as Soda Stereo, Virus, VIT, Los Enanitos Verdes, CAES. The success of Charlie Garcia as a solo artist, after leaving behind Sui Generis and Seru Girán and many others. In 1985, Radio Rock and Pop was released. It is the first attempt of a radio that only dedicates itself to rock and turns out to be an audience boom. Finally, in the 90s, they were changing for the national rock scene. The hits such as Carlos Garcia, Charlie Garcia's Pineta, Fito Páez, and Soda Stereo continued to mark the steps of the mainstream. Patricio Rey and Los Redonditos continued with the underground style, selling and attracting a large audience.
That's right, but Carlos, I would like to listen to Soda Stereo. Do you have something to share with us?
Of course, as a farewell, I'll leave you with an iconic song of this recognized group called De Música Ligera. Until the next opportunity.
Tengo una buena canción para cantar. Eso durmió.